Okay, so factoring review here. What's the first thing we always look for when we're factoring? Greatest common factor. So something that goes into all of the terms, yes? Okay, what's the second thing? Let's see, if there's two terms, what are we going to look for? All right. And so specifically, which one special are we looking at right now? Difference of two squares. A squared minus B squared, right? And how does that factor? A plus B times A minus B, correct? Okay, if there are three terms, what do we do? Yes, you do the AC method. And this is based on AX squared plus BX plus C equals 0, correct? And so AC method means we multiply the first times the last and find the factors of those. Do you agree? All right, 4 terms. And if we have 4 terms, what do? We group, that's right. Okay, so if it tells us to factor, example 1, if we have 4x squared plus x minus 3, what's the first thing we look for? Greatest common factor. So we're looking at all of those terms and we're trying to see, is there something that goes into all 3 of them, right? So is there a number that goes into all 3 of those terms? No. So then we look and there's 3 terms, yes? And if there's 3 terms, we use the? All right, so we multiply A times C. 4 times negative 3 is? Negative 12. So our factors are 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. Remember, if this is negative, then we have to have 1 positive and 1 negative, correct? If it's positive, then they have to have the same sign, yes? All right. So looking at this, what would we do here? All right, so we're, no, we've got to have 1 here, right? That would give me 4. I'd have to use a negative 3 and a positive 4, right? Because negative 3 plus 4 is 1, correct? All right, so I'm trying to get 1x. So we start with 4x squared, trying to get 1x, so I'd have negative 3x plus 4x. Because negative 3 plus 4 is 1. And I still have my minus 3, yes? How many terms do I have now? And when you have 4 terms, we factor by grouping. So we group the first 2, we group the last 2, yes? Looking at the first 2 terms, what could we factor out? Okay, so there's an x in common in the first 2, so we factor that x out. 4x squared divided by x is? And negative 3x divided by x is? Negative 3. Now look at the second 2 terms. Is there anything in common? What can you always factor out? 1. So we factor out a positive 1 because 1 times anything is just itself, right? Anything divided by 1 is just itself, yes? But you have to have something here, otherwise you don't have the binomial, right? So we factor out a 1, and that does not change anything. We still have 4x minus 3. Now here is your common factor, 4x minus 3, and then right here is your other factor, x plus 1. Yes? And that would be the factored form. All right, another one. What if we have 25x squared minus 4? Do we have a greatest common factor? Do you see anything that's alike that we could factor out? No. So then we look, there's two terms there, yes? So when we have two terms, we look for difference of two squares, yes? All right. Is this a perfect square?
Yes.
What's the square root? 5x, right? Is this a perfect square? What's the square root? And is it a difference? Yeah. So now we need it to factor into a plus b times a minus b. So this would be what?
5x plus 2 and 5x minus.
Yes. Questions on that? All right. Now what if it says to solve? So in example 3, we're going to solve. In order to solve it, though, what do we have to do? And we're also going to do what to solve it? Factor. We're going to factor to solve it. So the first thing we need to do is factor that. Okay? So here we have two terms. We look for a greatest common factor first, correct? What is the biggest number that goes into both 12 and 18? 6. And then what else could we factor out? An x. So if I divide 12x squared by 6x, I would get 2x. Minus 18x divided by 6x is 3. All right. So looking at that, if I just was supposed to factor it, that would be done, right? I can't factor it any further. But now that I'm supposed to solve it, I have to set each factor equal to 0. Agreed? So that means I have to set 6x equal to 0, and I have to set 2x minus 3 equal to 0. So here, what would I do? I would divide by 6. 6x divided by 6 is x. 0 divided by 6 is 0. Here, 2x minus 3 equals 0. What do I do with that one? Add 3. I get 2x equals 3. Then what would I do? And I would get x equals 3 over 2. So my solution set would be x equals, and remember we use the brackets, yes? And we list our smallest one first and the bigger one second. And that would be our solution. If we wanted it factored, this would be factored. Yes? So if it just asks you to factor, that's what you would end up with. If it asks you to solve, this is what you would end up with. Yes? All right, one last example. Here we have 2x squared minus 12x plus 18 equals 0. So the first thing we need to do is factor, right? So what do we look for first? Greatest common factor. So what is our greatest common factor? 2. So we factor out the 2 first, and that would leave us with what? No, we factor the 2 out. So 2x squared divided by 2 is just x squared. 12x divided by 2 is, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. Yes? Now, looking inside of parentheses, how many terms do I have? So could I factor it further?
Yes.
Yeah. When you have 3 terms, you factor using the AC method. What is your A? 1, right? It's what's in front of there. And if there's nothing there, it's assumed to be 1. So we do 1 times 9 is 9. So we have 1 and 9, 3 and 3. What are we going to use to get negative 6? Yeah, a negative times a negative gives us a positive, right? And when we add them, we get negative 6. So I still have to have this 2 on the outside. All I'm doing is replacing negative 6x with negative 3x minus 3x. You still have the plus 9. Correct? Now, how many terms are inside the parentheses? 4. And when we have 4 terms, what do? Group. All right, so we still have the 2 on the outside. What can you factor out of the first two terms? An x. And what's left? X minus 3. Looking at the second two terms, what could you factor out? A negative 3, right? And you always have to have a sign there, yes? Whether it's negative or positive, you have to have a sign there. And we would get x minus 3. Do you agree with that? So you still have the 2 on the outside. Here's your common factor, x minus 3. And then remember, your other factor comes with what's in front of those, x minus 3. Yes? This right here would be the factored form. Yes? But it asks us to solve. So is there a variable with the 2? If there's no variable with it, is it going to give us a solution? No, because if I set 2 equal to 0, is there anything to solve for? So that does not give me anything. Here I need to set x minus 3 equal to 0 and x minus 3 equal to 0. Are those going to give us the same factor or the same solution? Yeah, we would add 3, right? So we get x equals 3. Yes? And if you did that here, you'd also get x equals 3, correct? So we really only have one solution. It is 3, yes? We don't have to write the repeated solutions more than once, do we? Okay. Questions? Very quick review on factoring, right? If you're still struggling with that, you've got to get in and get some help. We're going to continue doing bell work over it for a while, and then you'll take a bell work quiz on it again. Yes?